Okay, we're up to Ois Hey. So he just finished explaining in Avodah the difference between two kinds of birur. Eichel from Psolis from Eichel, that's one category. We're dealing with outright negativity, and then there's a birur within Eichel itself. So the parallel is Avodas HaTefillah and Limudat Torah. So in Avodas HaTefillah, it's a real milchama. It's a milchama. Avodas HaTefillah is a time of, there's many levels to it, but it's a time really of the essence of it. Working with the self, with the nefesh habamish, with the yitzhahara, to refine it, to engender some kind of avos Hashem. That's a big milchama. Nefesh habamish is resistant. Avodas HaTefillah is elevating all the sparks that we have engaged with in the world, which was in milchama. And then Begashmi is simply davening and concentrating and rejecting Mashava Zodos is a big milchama. Rejecting distracting thoughts of whatever nature they might be. Whereas Torah is menucha, as explained elsewhere in Chassidus, that Torah affects a refinement of the world just by a psak din, a ruling. When Torah paskins that something is permissible, it's elevated. If Torah paskins something is also, it's rejected. The nature on the ground changes, of reality changes to a psak din in Torah. Right? I'm referring specifically to the psula, to a girl whose virginity returns if the Bezdin paskin that it's a leap year and she's therefore still underage, under the age of 3, at which point the virginity returns. So the Pasha Begashmi, so status changes if the Bezdin paskins and changes, makes it a leap year so that she didn't turn 3 yet. Right? We understand that one, yeah? That illustration. So that's a biru, not derech milchama, that's sitting in the Beis Medrash and paskining. And the world responds accordingly. So likewise, he said in this example, he brought in them. So where is the aliyah in Torah? Where's the Nahar Nur in Torah? Analogous to the Nahar Nur between Gan Eden Tacht and Gan Eden Elyon. So that is the aliyah in Torah itself. And the illustration was Rabbi Zera going from Talmud Bavli to Talmud Yerushalmi. To understand this deeper now, let's look at Ois Hey. So the pasuk, there's a stira. The Zohar points out a stira. What's the stira? One pasuk says, Vit Hashem Elikim Gan Be'eden. So where is the garden? The garden is in Eden. And then there's a pasuk that says that the river goes out of Eden to water the Gan. So in retrospect, what's the reconciliation? Gan Be'eden is what? Anybody wants to say? You said it when you reviewed. So Gan Be'eden is Chachma Bina, right? That's Chachma Bina. Eden being Chachma and Gan, the Makabel, the receiver, being Bina. And then the Nahar, the river going out to water the garden. That's the garden there is Malchus. And Eden is Zoh, and it's the Shpah of Zoh to Malchus. So that's the higher Eden and the lower Eden. Again, so the higher Eden is Chachma, Meiches, Timoah, and the lower Eden is Zoh. So what is the Indian here? So he explains that Eden, what's common to all levels of Eden is the Yinavad of Tainuk. So therefore, there is the Tainug that as it is in Chachma. And the example he brought is from the Tana that his face was glowing. And the end was, what was it? He discovered a new Tisefta, new teaching. So his face illuminated from Tainuk. So it's got to be not just an seichel yosher insight, but a whole new teaching. That's the point, of something radical. Chachma, new discovery. So therefore, there's the union of Tainuk in Chachma. Likewise, in Bina, even though Bina is Havon the Vasog, but there's a unique Gishmak, a unique Tainuk when you've developed and really understood the concept. It's two kinds of Tainuk. There's the Tainuk in the eureka moment of a discovery of something novel. And then there's the Tainuk of Bina when you've developed it and it's complete, and built a whole edifice of the idea. Bina also Lashon Binyan. But it's built in such a way that the Nukud of Chachma is not lost in it. So it's really one hemshech of Tainuk. So the Tainuk of the discovery in Chachma is now manifested in its development in Bina. If it's a true Bina that doesn't stray from the original concept, develops it faithfully. So these are the two levels of Tainuk. So it's drawn where into the garden. It was a vortex, we got to get this straight. So Eden HaTachten is Eden HaTachten, that's Midas. One second. So there's so let's spell it out here. No, just lost it. Let's go back here. So the higher level is no Yitzim Edem. Here we're drawing from Bina, and where is Bina being drawn? Again, I think I said something wrong here or not. My mind is in a fog right now a little bit. You can appreciate that. Okay, so the two levels of Eden again. Eden Lo, Eden Tata. Eden Lo is Chachma, and Eden Tata is the Makabel, the Gan, reflectively, is Bina and Malchus. So yeah, so the Chachma is drawn into Bina, there's that Tainuk. Bina, the Gan, receives the Tainuk of Chachma. That's Gan Eden or Elyon. That's Atzilus being Nimshech in Bria. Then there's Gan Eden HaTachten. So what is that? So that is Zo being Mashpia in Malchus. Okay. So the word here is that's the Midas as the Shaykh. Zer Anpin, Midas. But what he added here was, I'm looking at it in the 2/3 way down the paragraph here, that the Midas we're talking about is the Midas the Shaykhis Ela Moichen. We still got to thread it to the Kuda of Tainuk. If it's just a Midas on their own, the Tainuk isn't there. It's got to be a Midas bound up with Moichen, bound up, relatively speaking, with Etzem HaNefesh. As we learned in the previous Maimon, right? The example was Avraham, was Midas HaChesed. There's two kinds of Midas HaChesed. There's the external Midas HaChesed, and then there's the Etzem of Midas HaChesed, as it's bound up with Tainuk. And the difference is, remember, that if it's just Tam Chesed, and there's no ultimate Mashpia Chesed, so there's no need for it, so no problem. There's no need right now, so he's not in pain, he's not helping anybody. It's not a response to a need, so there's no need. But so that's the external level of chesed. It doesn't draw on tainug. Let's always remember the nekud of tainug is the person himself. It's the I. It's the core I. The ultimate tainug is the pleasure of being alive. The ultimate, the begashmi is the tainug. So Avram was mitztayer because his tainug was an emotional response to a reaction. But to find him, and if there's no ultimate mashpia, so he was betzar, he was in pain. That's what it means here. This is a tainug. We speak here about Gan Eden HaTachten. It's all going to be bound up with the essence, namely with the midas of being mashpia and malchus, which is behavior. Why is it a tainug Gan Eden dike thing? Because it's the hashpah of the midas as they're bound up with etzem hanefesh. Not a midas as a response, but midas as that's who I am. That the essence of the person finds expression in this midah, chesed, whatever it happens to be. Okay, that's what he means by what kind of midas are we talking about when Zoh is being mashpia and malchus here in this context? Not stam hashpah. It's hashpah that draws on tainug. It's Avram Avinu kind of hashpah. That is that's Gan Eden HaTachten. That's when Zoh is mashpia and malchus. So malchus is the gan is the mekabel. And what's being drawn in the mekabel gan is Eden, it's atzmis dike midas dike tainuk, and Eden Elyon is atzmis dike moichen dike tainuk. And there too in moichen, it's got to be not just like you said. The example was Tzov Pono of the Tana was a Tana that found it was not Moira. They found an old Tisefta. It's got to be because his whole Metzias is Torah. His whole Metzias is Torah. So he found a new teaching they didn't know existed. So it's transformative. Stam for another person, you're going to tell him there's a new Tosefta and teach it to him, and it was never revealed before. No tainuk. It's not his world. It's not his world. It doesn't define him. All the levels of tainuk have to be rooted in the etzem. So that when Chachas Mashpia Bina, what he emphasized here was, it's not Bina on its own. It's Bina that the Nekuda Beichola, which means the point in the chamber, is that Bina is faithful and developed still. We haven't moved away from the Nekudas Emes, which is Chachma, wherein the person has this Gishmak. And if he doesn't, he's not going to experience any of this. But the Neshama Lamaila, the world of truth, is now sitting in the world of truth. The Nekud of Tainuk is what permeates. He's getting out to the bottom line, is what permeates all the levels of Gan Eden, which is the reward for the Neshama after it's avoided down here, because this whole down here business, this whole journey, this whole destination, and the whole avoid is because Yisab HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Eibishter's Tainuk and in the Avodah V'yid, so on all the levels of Gan Eden, the Eibishter's Atzmis Dike Tainuk is manifest and touches the core of the Neshama, relatively speaking. It's all rooted in this Avah HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Surely for Hashem, at the core of it, his midas are not reactions to things outside of him. There is nothing outside of him. Why are there spheres? Because of the root of it all is Nisav HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's time to have a dir b'tachtonim. Therefore, Sol Heideshtal Shalos and all of the midas, etc. So this essential, I desire you, is what Gan Eden is. What is Gan Eden? Gan Eden is feeling Hashem's desire of us on these levels, intellectual, emotional, but then the Kudav is the Tainug. As the Eibishter reveals his Tainug in the Avodah V'yid. In general, what's going to merit a person going from one to the other? I mean, there is Shabbos and times even Neshama ascends. But in general, it's the Avodah. The Avodah is someone whose Avodah was Torah in this world, Gan Eden Elyon. Someone's Avodah was more Maisa, Gan Eden HaTachten, Maisa fueled by Midas. But in all the levels of Gan Eden, what is he experiencing relative to his Avodah is Hashem's nisava, Hashem's desire of you and what you have done. Okay, let's continue here. Find the right page. What page is this? Which page? Page Gimel. Let's continue. So but the whole point is to explain that it's both Inyan of Tainuk, it's true. They're both Gan Eden, they're both Eden, but not these two Gan Edens. But nonetheless, it's a whole different experience. It's a whole different experience, which will be explained further in the next ois, and hence the need for Nahar Dinur. So to go to Gan Eden HaTachten, you need the Nahar, the purging, Pasha, to get rid of the negative things, the stains on the neshama. But good to go to Gan Eden Elyon, it's to remove a much more subtle barrier. And what's the subtle barrier? That he explains in the next ois. Beautiful and profound next ois. Aspaklaria me'ir, aspaklaria she'ena me'ir. Yediyas achir, yediyas hashlila. Right? That's the words. A luminous glass, or a clouded glass, reflective glass. Yediyas achir, yediyas hashlila. Let's look at this ice again. So what's the difference between the two kinds of idea? So idea Sachiv is very simply speaking, idea Sachiv, remember the stira that Menashe HaMelech asked of Yeshaya, he accused him of heresy. He says, you say that you saw the face of the Lord. Yeah, he saw the Merkava. Va'era is pnei, what do you say? Va'era, but the man doesn't bring it. As pnei other. And Moishe
Mara Likim.
Mara Likim, Va'era Mara Likim would be. The whole Merkava, but he saw the Adam alien. And Moishe Rabbeinu said, right? The project says about Moishe Rabbeinu Ke lo yira'ani Adam l'choy. So how dare you? So what's the pshat? The Gemara says, what's taka the pshat? Menashe was a pretext to want to kill Yeshayahu. He didn't like his prophecies and his rebuke. But what's taka the pshat? And the various other things he accused him of that I told you. Hashem is found, not found. Moishe Rabbeinu says last week's parsha b'chol kareinu elov. And you say it's only Dirsh Hashem b'motzei, karu b'yosei kodev. So the Gemara asks, so what's taka the pshat? The Gemara resolves all these things. So what's the resolution of seeing God or not seeing God? Luminous or not luminous? That's the Gemara's answer. So Yeshaya sees Hashem through a filter that you can grasp, simple language, post tzimtzum with definition and akabbalah that you can see and describe. Moishe Rabbeinu is connecting to a level of likus that's completely transcendent. It's me'ira, it's not filtered, unfiltered, so they're kilo yarani adam. So that's it. So the idea hashlila is a higher level. It's connecting to a level of likus that cannot be described affirmatively. Idea achiyov means describing it affirmatively. It's not this, it's beyond description. And the result is Yediyah Sachiyuv, as he goes into the sefer, he says it here or later, is Das Tachten, is Bittul Hayesh, not Bittul B'Mitzias, but on the contrary, there is a Yesh, he understands it. And what is, he's understanding Likus, so he's bottled to Likus. That's an affirmative understanding that still not just leaves room, but is based on the yesh. It's all based in his asaga. And Bittul b'Metzias is not based in his asaga. It's based on the truth of Elikus, and it's mevatel him. Ki lo yirani adam v'choy. It engenders a Bittul b'Metzias. So this is another analogy between Gandein HaTacht and Gandein Elyon. And later he'll say in Avodah, it's kirvas elikim litov. Godliness is good for me. I love this and I appreciate it. And his whole Yiddishkeit is based on the benefits on all levels, the benefits that he gains from Yiddishkeit. He feels good about himself, and it's endless levels of this. It's fulfilling, and it's gives a sense of purpose, and there's answers to questions, all of the legitimate and true values of Yiddishkeit. It's Gan Eden HaTacht. And Gan Eden HaElyon, Bittul b'Metzias, Espaklari HaMe'ira, this is the paradox. He says later, it's a tainug, it's a true tainug. And here's the Nakuda. It doesn't say it in my black and white, but here's the Nakuda. It's not the tainug that he has, but he's touching the Eibishter's tainug. The Eibishter's tainug he has in him, not his tainug in Yiddishkeit, in the Eibishter. But Eibishter is touching Eibishter's tainug in him, and that's the ultimate tainug, to feel God's delight. That's the pure tainug. The paradox is that kind of pleasure is only experienced but when one is selfless. If the whole agenda is self, it's going to be always aspaklaria she'ena me'ira. It's a filtered tainug, and it's very beautiful and very fulfilling. You may not even know such a thing exists ever. And that's why there's a need. It's critical. There's no other way to go from this tainug to that other than the har denur. It's not a higher level. It's a complete bittul. It's a complete bittul of a different order of avodah. It's about the Eibishter's nisav, right? That he says at the end of the next verse. Yeah, so there's an arichas. Let's just look a bit at the arichas here. This explained also ma'ayin basa u'la'on ha'tahilach. Remember that? Mishnah Pirkei Avos, Perek Gimel. So ma'ayin, you come from nothing. This is Gan Eden HaElyon, relatively speaking. Ayin, it's totally beyond creation. Creation starts with the midas, basically, right? 7 days of creation. It's Gan Eden HaElyon, and la'on, where la'on means a place that's already place, time. That's malchus. That's where you're going. So ayin is headed in Metzias, right? So this is Haspaklari HaMe'ira. So this is the Giloy of this is, even though the Maimon doesn't use the exact language here, but going back to that's the Nahar, being in Eden, it's Chacham, the unity of Chacham and Bina. Chacham is Ma'ayin Timotza, that's level of Ayin. And that's what's Nimshach in Bina. That's the Tainuk. The Tainuk, Bina is connecting to the Bittul, to the Ayin of Chachma, where Hashem's Nisav is revealed. That's the Ayin of Chachma. And that causes Shlilas HaMetzias. Again, that's a Tainuk not based on self, but a touching of the Eibishter's Tainuk. The Tachten is la'on, to a place Metzias. That's the person, the conscious self. So to go from on to ayin is an har denur. To go from the clouded vision, which engenders yediyas hachi of the self, to the translucent ki lo yirani adam v'cho yediyas hashlila, that needs to be immersed in the har denur. And then after that is the omud. And he says, what's the omud? That's the actual aliyah, the escalalus, first the bittul and then the ascent. That's the omud, the omud, the pillar that connects Gan Eden HaTacht and Gan Eden HaElyon. That's the ascent, that's the aliyah, which is explained, he says in the Kotetayra, the Maimar of Bazeh HaNai Rabba Purim. Oisvov. So this is in general the difference between Avodah of Shabbos and the weekday. Do you remember, friends? Okay, so Shabbos Beirut is also because Shabbos is the Aliyah of Bia and Atzilus. And Eden Elyon. Even Malchus ascends, or even Maisa, everything ascends, but it's Bria ascends. And the pasuk he brought here, remember the pasuk here? Anochi shloimi amoni Yisrael. Remember the story? Remember the story? When the woman comes out and saves the city, David the Melech had instructed, or they were going to, Yoav was on the instructions of David the Melech was going to raise the city because of the rebellion of this fellow called Shva. So she comes out and she says, I'm faithful. I'm faithful to David the Melech. Don't destroy the city. And so they killed this guy and lobbed his head over the wall, and Yoav leaves the city alone. So she is Malchus. There's Malchus, where Malchus descends into the world of rebellion. That's the weekday. But now she's describing the matzav of the Aliyah of Malchus, of the birur, after the post-refinement. They got rid of this guy. And so Malchus is now united with David and Melech. Malchus is united with Atzilus. That's the deeper meaning of that story. Yeah, remember? So what's the weekday? So the weekday is yes, so Malchus, Gan Eden HaTachten, as it descends into Bia, is, get this straight, the first lines of this ice over here. Beirut is forbidden because Shabbos is the Aliyah of Bia and Atzilus. Even Malchus, which is generally Spaklaria She'ena Me'ira, because it engenders Bia, Tzimtzum, is united with Atzilus. Even Malchus is part of Olam HaAchdos. I'm faithful, she says to you, to David the Melech. This is true, this line here, even in Gan Eden HaTachten, even in Gan Eden HaTachten, much more so, Gan Eden HaElyon, the unity of Malchus with the Gan Eden HaTachten means, again, Malchus as a source of what was Gan Eden HaTachten, again, is Amshocha of the Midas to Malchus. Period. Gan Eden HaElyon is, Gan Eden HaElyon is Chachma and Bina, so for sure there's this absolute unity. But it's even true of Gan Eden HaTachten. Okay, so we'll continue tomorrow, where he revisits the Shabbos and the weekday, and the two levels of Nahar Dinur, spelling it out in Kirvas Elikim Toiv, Kirvas Elikim Bli Toiv. Okay, progression.